Hi everyone, welcome to the HubShots Q&A, and this is May 2025 edition. Craig, welcome to the Q&A. How is it?
Yeah, it's good to be back, Ian. You know, not that I want to talk about health issues. I was sick for a bit, delayed thing.
But you're well now. That's the main
I'm well
thing.
again, and that's the great thing. You always appreciate your health.
Correct.
Sometimes I think you should just get sick, just so that you can appreciate good health afterwards again. But no, I'm really well. How have you been? I know you've been traveling a bit.
I've been good. I've been traveling. I've been enjoying travel. You know what I love, Craig? It is being a different location gets you out of your zone, and you get to think differently. You get to explore new things. I went to Singapore and Malaysia for work, and so it was actually really nice just experiencing different culture, different food. And I just love it. That's me. You might be different on the other hand.
Yeah, no, there's something interesting about when you travel. I've noticed this, nothing to do with HubSpot, this, by the way. But you notice the trees, you notice the architecture. There's something in a new location that makes you more observant. Of course, you get back to your own city, and then it's like, you just filter it all out kind of thing. So, new experiences. They're good. Now, speaking of some of your installs, though, I'll just quickly go through what we're going to cover today in the Q&A. We're just going to have a little bit of a chat about some of our recent kind of calls with clients and some of the things that have come out, which is always interesting.
Yes.
We're going to chat about some questions that some members of the school community and HubShots listeners have sent through. So they're really good, great real-world questions that we're going to dive into. There'll be some small to medium business questions, some things around marketing nurtures, and then also contact rotation. But let's just start with some basics. And you and I always talk about this, don't we? And it's kind of like probably more than half, 80% of the time when we're working with clients, it's not super advanced stuff, new beta stuff, new amazing, incredible things. It's just getting the basics right. What are some of the things that you've, experienced lately?
Well, I experienced lately is multiple email fields. So especially people that have come from other systems, they seem to import data. They necessarily don't check data. So in HubSpot, you know that the email field is the primary identifier. They've got multiple email fields like email 1, email 2, email 3. They might have, and some businesses might need these. They need backup emails that they need to contact people on. But then you realize you've actually got a lot of emails inside HubSpot without the primary email field being filled out. So that's something to be aware of. And some people don't realize. They just go and create, they'll need an email. A good example is we're working with a customer that's doing events. And so then they go, I need an email for the speaker. I need an email for the person who's sitting at this table. I'm like, no, you don't. You just need that one contact. And you need to be able to associate them, obviously, with that table or that speaker, right? So just understanding how data fits together, there are some tools rolling out in HubSpot with data management and about how things fit together. I think they'll be really good. But just little things like that, just to be aware of how it fits together is really important.
Can I just check, when you say they've got no primary email, so there's almost no way to tell that they're a unique contact. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
And does that mean they can't actually be marketing contacts then? You can't send them emails? You couldn't?
You know what was funny? You can, because you can make it a marketing contact, right? Because you could push it to an ad platform.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So, how do you push that up to an ad platform?
Correct. So they had it as marketing. If you're going to push it to the ad platform, it needs to obviously match an email. So I've never actually matched a different email because it always looks at the default email that's coming through. So, but that's probably one way you'd want to do it. Maybe you had either identifying data like addresses or postcodes or countries that they live in where they can try and match the person, but without an email is generally hard going. So they had some that had emails and had phone numbers. Had other alternative emails and phone numbers. Some that had just a phone number and no emails whatsoever because they've been pushed in from a calling system. And just being able to understand as soon as we just did it in a view quickly just to say, okay, let's see how many contacts have no email, no phone number. Okay, well, now we understand what's going on here.
Wow.
Who has one email and no phone number. And we just contact was nice because you could put the columns in. you could share it with others and they'll see those columns. So I added all the different columns so they could see it, and I just shared the view.
Yep.
So it was really good, as opposed to creating a list and waiting for the list to generate and then making sure that they could be shared, because the list columns don't appear the same for other people as they do in a view. So I like one thing you and me love to do is work out of views, share them, verify what we're doing, and then create the list out of that.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny you mentioned views, because I actually had that on our list, some of the basics. But let me just check, because I think some, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some of the ad platforms like Facebook, you can match them just on phone number. So as you sync them up, it might not be email address, but if you've actually got their phone number, assuming it's a mobile number, that is, it can do the matching that way. So it makes sense that they would be a marketing contact, even if you didn't have email. But yeah, you definitely want the email in there, don't you?
Yeah. Next thing we see is people that put their brand assets and they put their logo, and they put they'll just get it from the designer and they'll put a full-size logo, which is like about 2,000 pixels wide, and they put it in, not realizing that it's potentially used across landing pages and other assets within HubSpot. Could be used on the page, like subscription preferences, and then you just have your logo take up the whole page at the top, and then you see your subscription preferences. So that was one. The other thing that I came across was that, especially if you're not running your website on HubSpot and you don't set up your domains. So subscription preferences are hosted on HubSpot. So you want to make sure that you actually set up the basic ones. Your email sending, you might want to do a website or landing page, probably a landing page, and I think you can assign the domain into the subscription preferences. And then also your email tracking and your email preview domain. So generally we would say email.yourbusiness.com, or for sales emails and service emails, I just do a prefix called se.yourbusiness, and that seems to work really well.
Great tip there.
Yeah.
Should flesh that out. All right. Actually, when it comes to just pages, sometimes people don't even format, the error pages and all those kind of things, all available from settings, so often gets overlooked.
Correct.
I'll just mention per seats pricing confusion. I've had this actually just a call earlier this morning before this one.
Yes.
Where it is getting so complex now, the pricing with HubSpot, because they've got multiple hubs. Within each hub, they've got multiple tiers: Starter, Pro, Enterprise. And then some have seats that are core seats, and then others are pro seats, and all these kind of things that can get very overwhelming. And then they're like, marketing. Do I need a seat for marketing? I can understand I need a seat for sales, but I need one for marketing. And what about Content Hub? Things like that. And it's almost like, Operations Hub's almost the only place still waiting to be made more confusing. And so part of this, and here's the other thing, Ian, I think they've made some changes recently where you can't actually be a super admin unless you have some of the seats allocated to that person. So just the normal person from IT that was in charge of maintaining the portal. Yeah, I think there's some changes rolling out. I'm not sure of all the logistics. It's certainly not for everyone yet. And so it does become a friction point. And so some of the basics, we're talking about the basics that people need to get in place. I know everyone wants to get all the advanced stuff, but some of the basics are just getting your seats correct. Do you have enough seats? Do you have too many seats? Can you consolidate them down? Things like that. And so there's no real answer to this that's kind of, here's the solution, except chatting about it. And I think that's one of the things that's come up. But my point here is, let's just get the basics right. And so if you're talking with your HubSpot partner agency or working with a HubSpot consultant, get them to check your seats. Is that actually right? Are you paying the right things? Have you had that kind of stuff happening lately? You run into that? I
have a lot lately, Craig, especially with new customers, with support, sales, marketing teams, and there is that confusion. And I think they're becoming more granular with access. So I saw a note the other day that if you don't have a service seat, you can't access, something's going to get removed, I think, in this month. So just little things like that. And somebody asked me the other day, it's like we were in inbox, right? For example, and they're kind of encouraging people to move everything in the inbox into the help desk.
Yep.
Now, to access the inbox, you don't need a seat, right?
Right.
But to access the help desk, you need a seat.
Yeah.
So then what do? Do you keep it in the inbox, or because you've got, for example, let's say you've got your sales at email in your inbox, right? Doesn't necessarily mean we want to put it into help desk, but everything else that's support related, yes, it makes sense to be in help desk.
Yeah.
So what do you do in that instance? Is it the right move? I don't think it's the right move because it's sales related, and I just want to keep it separate. So there are all of these questions that come up, as changes happen.
Yeah.
And we've got to work through it, I think.
It's interesting, isn't it? That inbox versus help desk decision, I guess.
Correct.
At the moment, I wouldn't say it's compelling to move from an inbox to help desk, but it's going to be because they're going to add a lot more of the AI stuff through the help desk channel than they will in inbox anytime soon. Yeah. And
that is it, Craig. Like what I noticed when I was training some people a couple of weeks ago, the AI inside the help desk is actually very good. It started to learn as I was training. It was learning from people responding, and then it was basically putting together the response. And they were like, "Oh, it's already done it for me." I said, "Yeah, don't just click send. Read it and update it if it needs to be updated." But it was getting pretty good, and that was only after a few days of looking at tickets going in and out.
Yeah,
and I think that's where the big unlock will be. It's like, how can I efficiently use the help desk with AI? That's where the big unlock will be. Yeah, cool. All right, some good basics there. Let's move on to some questions. I'll quickly walk through the questions that we had from some of our listeners and also in the community. So this first one is from Alex. I won't mention his full name, but he's running a small business, small to medium business. He can buy lists. That's one option. He can scrape websites. He can use third-party tools. What should he do there? And then once he gets those contacts into HubSpot, how does he qualify them? The lead status property, which is kind of out of the box field from HubSpot, should he use that? And then lifecycle stages, are they useful? How should he consider those? And then finally, he's more on looking after the customer. Okay, sure, maybe the sales part's going, but what about tickets and service objects? When is it appropriate for him to be thinking about those and not kind of getting ahead of himself? And so, yeah, I've got a bunch of thoughts about that, but I thought that'd be really useful. Maybe, we spend 5-10 minutes kind of going through some of these questions, pulling on our experience working with clients over the years. Do you have any initial thoughts that you'd mention, Ian? I have lots of thoughts, Craig, but I would like you to go first. All right. Well, let's talk about getting contacts in. So he's starting. It's only been going a couple of months, and he's like, right, I've got to reach all people in certain industry. I won't talk about the industry he's in. I've got to reach all the people in this particular industry. How do I do it? And so that's not really a HubSpot question. It's more of a marketing, lead gen or demand. It's more of an agency question. So I'm not going to talk about it much, except to say this. I think these days getting those contacts, you can get them through third-party sources. I think we've used Apollo and a few others to source them. I think they can be good. They're much better in the B2B side than, say, to B2C. Yeah. But if he's looking for all these particular suppliers in a particular industry, that's where I'd start, third-party tools. When it comes to scraping sites, a very popular approach is people will use tools to kind of look through Google Maps or Google any business that's got a Google My Business listing, trying to scrape those. Now, you can go about that yourself, but often you can just buy those as lists. Someone else has provided all that data and sending it to you. So then the question is, okay, you've got all these data options. Let's say you can get access to data. I don't think that's a particular, there's not a shortage of that kind of information, shall we say. There might be varying quality of it, but that's not the issue. Terms of privacy.
Should you buy lists and use them? I'm not going to actually say whether you should or shouldn't, because I know lots of people do. So if I get on here and say, look, I wouldn't do that, I don't want to do that, that's not actually helpful. I know lots of people do. Assume that they do. Then the question is, well, how do I handle that data? And there are privacy considerations. I find it interesting that there's this idea of consent, at least in Australia. I know it's different, especially in the EU and in some parts of the US. But in Australia, if you put your contact details on your website, legally, it's a little bit of a grey area. This is not legal advice, but legally that's considered consent, implied consent, not explicit consent, implied consent. And so then the question is, can I use it to send them emails? The answer is you probably can. Again, this is not legal advice, but as a sales email. Whether you send it to them as a marketing email, like mass emails, well, I know people do it anyway. Probably not. I know I'd get tons of that. We all get that. It's spam, comes to us, we mark it as spam or we unsubscribe, all that kind of stuff. But what's if you want to use sales emails, reaching out to them, personal one-to-one emails? I think that is very common. And I think as long as you treat them politely, shall we say, and you're providing information that's maybe useful to them, especially if it's related to their industry and it's just not mass spam, I think a lot of people do that. So then, can you do that from HubSpot? Sure. You can send from your own email or you can send sequences. I think that's okay. So I'll pause there for a second before we go on to kind of qualifying and lead status. But yeah, what's your thoughts or what's your experiences with what people are doing there, Ian?
Very similar, Craig. The other thing that I have seen people doing is they use other platforms to do the initial qualification. So, for example, let's say they send an email from another platform. The person engages and clicks something. They then get taken. Their data then gets pushed into HubSpot, or they convert on a HubSpot on a landing page where the data goes in.
Yeah.
And then the process starts out of HubSpot. So they kind of separate the two so that they don't ruin their reputation.
Right. So that's
HubSpot.
From like an email sender deliverability reputation piece,
Correct.
is it? So that they don't impact their HubSpot portal. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing is making sure that the data is actually good. So when we're checking data providers, is the data actually valid? So I think one of the nice things when you're sending with HubSpot and you're using a sequence is that HubSpot, if it's already sent, someone has sent it and it's bounced, it's not going to let you send that sequence. It's going to say this contact has bounced somewhere in HubSpot. So it's an automatic validation to go, oh, okay, that's not working. So we're not going to send it, right? So that's a bit of smarts, I guess, when you think on a global perspective of what's happening. And I quite like that as opposed to the spray and pray approach of, we're just going to send all of these, we haven't validated it, because you can get stuck. Like you can get stuck and then get caught in this trap of like your account gets halted and then you've got to prove to HubSpot you've actually got consent to communicate with these people.
So you're talking about marketing emails.
If you're sending via marketing, correct.
Yeah, but the sales emails, you don't.
The sales emails, no. But I think in terms of your sender reputation, I think you'd want to make sure that is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think in summarizing what we're both saying, it's kind of like if you have good quality data that you come in and you treat with, I'll call it respect, but respect is, what does that mean? You're sending a cold email. Is that respectful? Well, I think if you provide value to them or potential value, sure. But if you're just slamming them, that's not high value. All right. So you're chatting with them. Well, you're sending emails. Let's say you've got the list in and you're starting to send some sales emails and then you're qualifying them. What's your thoughts on calling them as well and having the phone number as part of that initial data that you can chat with them?
I think that's good, Craig. Like and it varies. Like when I talk to people, some people are like, I don't want to, I'd rather have a conversation or I'd rather talk to someone. So it can be a part of the process. I know the ones that work really well with me is that they always say, I'd love to send you something. So they're kind of verifying your email in the process because they're saying, I'd love to send you, the latest report, or I want to send you this document that you can read through. Like it's not hey, you've got to buy something from me. And in doing so, they're probably passing a bit of goodwill and verifying your email at the same time. So I actually think it's a good step to do. It takes resources, and things are getting easier. Like, I don't know that you've looked at any AI dialers that are actually doing the initial reach out. So, that'll just start to get better over time. But there's nothing as good as having somebody real on the other side of the phone.
It's interesting you mentioned that and especially these AI dialers, these AI sales reps that call out on your behalf. Because the point I was going to make is that I think phone calls are a differentiator. Everyone can send emails at scale.
Correct. So
likely low response. If you take the time to call someone, that's a step up. Now, getting called by people can also be annoying, as we all know. We've always had that annoying sales rep hounding us, about it's really annoying. They're providing no value. They're just providing irritation. And because I talk with my business mentor about this, and I'll say when I'm going, I'm getting no response when I'm emailing people. He'll say, are you calling them? I'm like, no. He's like, call them. And he's great at it. He just calls and calls and calls. And whenever I do actually call people, because I don't like calling. I'd much rather spend my time in HubSpot building stuff, right? Like you probably. I don't like calling people. But when I do, it's different. I get a different response. And sometimes after calling someone, even if I've just left a voicemail, they haven't answered, I'll get a reply on the email that I'd sent a week or two before. So it's just that note to them that like, this is a real person. They might have seen my email, just discounted it because it's just at scale, but there's emails getting sent right, left and center. But they called me. It's a little bit of a differentiator. And so then when it comes to those AI dialers, it's like, well, once we start getting all these calls from AI voices and things like that, we're just going to tune that out as well. So there's going to have to be some other step where we show that it's us personally. I think there's going to be a big opportunity for people to personally be calling. And in fact, and I'm kind of going on a tangent here around AI. You and I were chatting about this yesterday, Ian, when we caught up for lunch. There's this whole opportunity around AI because AI, as much as it creates answers, there's no shortage of answers, as we say, but there's a shortage of good questions. As these answers go out, and we're always getting these answers, how to do marketing and things, they're all the same. Mm-hmm. And the big problem with AI, sure, there's benefits of scale, but there's problems of it being generic. And if you rely on AI for content and marketing, it's just becoming the same. It's the same old thing. And so there's an opportunity to stand out, be different. And that's going to roll into sales as well. Kind of these AI deals, they're all going to turn up the same. We'll be able to spot them being different. That's going to be the key. All right, we've moved on from kind of qualification. What about lead status? How do you use the lead status property in HubSpot, Ian? This is a contact property, lead status.
We use it at the very initial stages. Obviously, we've got the lead object, right? But let's do the lead status, right? So if you haven't moved
actually, let's go back a step. Let's talk about the lead object versus a contact object because, let's explain that.
Yeah. Okay. So the lead object needs to be connected. At the end of the day, it's a contact, right? So the lead is an object that can be associated to a contact. And just think of that as I call it a mini sales pipeline when you are trying to get a hold of that person. Now, what's nice about it, it's really simple. It's like, have you managed to engage them? Have you actually connected with them? And then is either are they qualified or disqualified? Now, there's nothing wrong with disqualifying them because it could be perfectly appropriate that you disqualify them because they are not ready. Could be one of them. Or maybe they don't have the funds right now. They're perfectly valid. Or maybe you just disqualify them because they're a bad fit, right? But what's nice in the lead object is you can say if these disqualification reasons are chosen, I want to create another lead object to do the follow-up at the appropriate time. Like if they're not ready now and they say, call me back in 6 months, you can get another lead object. So you can manage that lead process through the next time. So that's what I like about it. It's just trying to keep it simple, have a way to track that interaction before it transfers into a deal. And then once you have obviously qualified it, there's a setting to say, hey, create the deal automatically.
Okay, so let's pause just for a second there. And chat about, so you could have a contact.
Yep.
And we'll get on to lifecycle stage in a second. But let's just assume the lifecycle stage at the moment is lead. We're saying, okay, this contact, are they actually a lead at the moment or for future? And so with the lead object, you can say this contact can have multiple lead records associated. Were they a lead? Yep, I chatted with them, not good timing. Okay, close. But I'm going to create a lead against this contact because they're going to be a lead in 3 months.
Correct.
And that gives you a lot more flexibility than just say lifecycle stage, which we'll get to in a second. And you're also saying that, well, using that lead records, you could actually combine that with using lead status as well. Is that what you were saying? Or would you more use lead status related to a deal potentially against the contact?
Lead status, Craig, generally I've used that even before it's become a deal. So on the initial contact, before we had the lead object, and not everybody's using the lead object, we still use the lead status. So like when we're working with builders, for example, when they have an initial conversation and they go, oh, let's call it a junk contact. They class junk contacts as being ones that are out of area, would be one of them.
Yep.
Or like when it's not even out of area, actually. They could be out of the country. So that's a junk contact.
Yeah, right.
If they're in area and they disqualify them because they might be they might not have budget, they'll actually state that in the lead status. No budget or not the appropriate budget, or out of area if they're in the state but not in the areas that they build, but we still collect the information. So maybe if they start building in those areas, they might say, oh, tell me all the lead status that were out of area and that belong to these postcodes. Oh yeah, let's go and target those people now because we can build in that area. So that's how we've kind of used it with customers prior to the lead object being available. Just the initial point of qualification before that deal actually happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. So lead status and lifecycle stage, they've been properties, they've been on contacts since forever. They've always been there, but you're right, the lead object is fairly new, shall we say. So lead status has been there right from the start. I've found that in clients' portals, most of the time, lead status is best used almost as a subcategory of the opportunity stage when a contact has a deal. So I'll come back to lead status in a sec, but let's go to lifecycle stage. What's lifecycle stage? As just a quick reminder to people, it's kind of like just a high-level indicator of the stage they're in. You can customize it, but typically there might be, are they a subscriber just on the newsletter list? Are they a lead? Oh, they've shown a bit of interest. They might have filled out a form. Are they a marketing qualified lead? Oh, there's a bit of behavioral stuff backing it up. Oh, they've visited multiple pages, that kind of thing. Are they an SQL sales qualified lead? Now, people often debate, has sales qualified it or have marketing qualified it for sales? Put that little debate aside. Sales qualified is maybe they've looked at pricing page. They've booked in a meeting with sales. After sales qualified, you might say the next life cycle stage could be opportunity. That's normally when you've created a deal. Not always, but normally. The opportunity goes along and there's a deal in that place. And then maybe the deal is closed and they become a customer. There's a whole bunch of other life cycle stages you can add. Maybe they're former customer, maybe they're, a job candidate, or maybe they're not a fit, or there's lots of things, but they're the kind of the main ones. So life cycle stage, back to Alex's question, should he be using it in his portal for his? Always. Every single customer, we're trying to get the life cycle stages definitely used and ideally accurate and maintained as well. And a lot of these are just maintained in settings. It's not like you need complex workflows or all kinds of manual intervention. They're often handled. So let's go to one of those life cycle stages, maybe then opportunity. There's a deal related to that contact. Lead status, we've found, can be a way to add granularity. So you don't have to add all these different leads, deal stages for every kind of nuance. And so to your example, what's if the deal didn't go through? Why didn't they go through? Well, you could put a closed lost reason. You could say, timing wasn't right or budget didn't there. But you can also put that in the lead status against the contact. It just wasn't right. And so then very easily, you can later create lists of contacts based on lead status, lifecycle stage, and maybe you're going to push them up to ad platforms or filter them out, or they're going to get different email follow-ups, all that kind of stuff. What would you add to that, Ian?
No, I just find it very interesting that you've used it in a very different way, Craig. But I think what it highlights to me is that being really clear within your business about what these things mean. And so I think I've said this before, stick it on a definitions dashboard where you know where that is, or next to the report is a really good one, because people read the report so they get emailed the dashboard reports. And if it's very clear of like, hey, this is what we mean by this lead status, then there's no misunderstanding about how we're utilizing this. And that's been, I think, the saving grace with a lot of stuff that we've done, is being very clear, because as we know, people come, they go, businesses change and transform. So what this meant a year ago might be very different to what it means today. So I think like having that front and center to people is very, very important.
Such a good reminder. Thank you for that. Yeah, people often spend ages working out all this nuance of lead status, all these different, because it is customizable. You can set all your own lead statuses. They work it all out, but then no one knows what the hell they mean, and so they don't get used. So that's so true. Final question for Alex is around tickets and service objects. He's got his sales process going. Does tickets and service impact that, or is that something for a future piece for him? What's your thoughts?
How I would ask the question is, how sophisticated are you with managing your business process? So now I haven't used the service object, Craig. I've used a lot of tickets because you might, like once you onboard a customer, and I know you have, like we have an email called team at our business names. So we often tell our customers, instead of emailing us, if you email this email address, we will, one of our team will actually help you out a lot quicker, because Craig and myself are recording right now. We could be busy. They might say, I need help now to sort something out, or maybe they might call you. So it's a nice way to manage that in the help desk or in a ticket pipeline to say, okay, well, we know who the customer is. This is what they want done. We can track it through and work out what needs to happen. Yeah. So that might be the first port of call. In terms of service, I don't know the answer to that question. So.
All right. Well, let's just actually keep it as tickets. That's actually a good question, because the tickets are really powerful. They can have their pipelines, they can have ticket stages, or they call them statuses. So they're a great way to manage processes related to a contact. So a ticket can be related to a contact. It can actually be associated with a deal or overall company, etc. I think you're right to say, well, what's the question or the problem to solve that he has, and what's his sophistication? I think tickets can be useful. And by the way, the problem with the name tickets is people think it's just for customer support. And I'm sure that can be part of that. But tickets can also be used for a range of things. Can be internal processes, can be stuff. So should he be thinking of using that in his portal? You're right, it's how sophisticated is he? Now, if he has other team members that are doing things kind of like not really part of the sales process, but an internal process and related to it, tickets can be a great way to actually assign things to other people. You could use tasks, there's lots of things, but tickets can be good because they have an owner. And so you don't really want, let's say you've got an internal process related to conversations you're having with contact and the deal. You don't really want to create another deal and set another owner for that. You definitely don't want to change the owner to someone else. You want to keep it as the sales rep. You probably don't want to be like, oh, contact, I'll create a new owner field or a user field just for thing. You can just quickly associate a ticket. So is it the first thing I'd be focusing on for Alex? No. Is it something to think about in the future as his team grows? Yeah, definitely.
I'll give you an example. Craig got a customer who, they're a very lean team. We're talking like 3 people.
Yeah.
Run an online store. They ship a physical product.
Yeah.
They use tickets because they work with us, for example, for all of their HubSpot optimization and some of their marketing. They have lots of providers. So they have somebody who does design. They have somebody who, they've got other people that help on an ad hoc basis, right? They've essentially created ticket pipelines. And so they track all of that activity with their vendors, essentially, in their pipeline. So every week when I have a catch up with them, they'll be like, okay, well, here's what you're doing. Okay, maybe this part of this needs to go to Craig over here. So let's move it to his pipeline or create a task for Craig.
Yeah.
And they track it. So it's actually worked really well. They're not working out of some other system. It's just, I have my own pipeline. So because they deal with individuals, they've just said, oh, there's Ian's pipeline, there's Zach's pipeline, etc. And so we just work within that and we track it through. So it's worked really well for them. It's all in one place. We can keep a track of what's going on. I think I've created a property on all of those just so we can track time, like how much time was spent on stuff.
Oh,
we just have a property, we put time spent so that it's clear to them how much time we're spending doing stuff because it's not stuff that we always do together.
Yeah.
We might get somebody on our team. So like if I've been assigned something and I can't do it, I will assign a task to somebody on our team to say, hey, can you do this part? And then when that task is complete, then I know, and then I can close or move the ticket for review with them. So that's how we use it externally with other people.
Great example, use case there. All right, moving along. Marketing nurture campaigns. This is actually a follow-up question. I won't mention her name. I don't think she's given me. I normally like to ask people's permission. Hey, can I mention you on the show kind of thing. So, but this is a follow-up related to B2B nurture campaigns. And we have a whole lesson on this in our school community campaign course. But let's say you're building nurtures. Her question is, well, look, how many should I have? I'm looking after marketing for my B2B brand. How many nurtures should I have? And what types of campaigns should I build first? So maybe I'll just mention a few comments, kind of give you a bit more context on this one. With nurtures, what we're talking about is a follow-up series of emails at its simplest. And that might just be 3 email follow-ups to a contact. Here, don't worry about whether they're lifecycle stage or any of that kind of complexity. But it's like, I'm sending a nurture. And so then the question, which we kind of covered last time, was, well, how many emails should I have in my nurture? What's a good number? And then you get all those questions about what time of day should I send? What's the frequency? All that kind of stuff. And I tend to think people overanalyze on that. And I always think it's about the relevancy of the email rather than the frequency or even the timing. That said, you should always look at your own stats and see what timing. You know, people say, oh, Tuesday afternoon's the best. I'm like, is it? It might be for me one week and then the next week I'm out at a dentist appointment. Who knows, you know? So you can test and measure. I've had other people say, oh, I always send on weekends because people often check their emails Sunday night before they're going back to the office. I'm like, okay, test and measure. I'm very wary of people that say best practice is we analyzed these millions of emails and found it. So test and measure. Okay, so how many, that's kind of how many should I have? Well, as many as you can provide value with. Okay, don't try and create, this nurture sequence is going to have 30 emails. It's like, well, really? Is that relevant? Now, you know, back in the day, Ian, when we were doing nurtures for solar dealers, we used to do managed marketing. We actually had this workflow of emails, and it was 42 days, and I think there was something like 20 to 22 emails as part of that sequence. Yeah, it was front loaded. Wow. The first couple of days, every day, sent an email, and then it tapered off. But that's because we had so much high quality content and information for them. Back in those days, people didn't know a lot about solar. Yeah. They didn't know. So it was a real educational time. These days, everyone knows, and so they probably don't need all that. But there was an educational, it was very highly educational. And so my point is, test and measure, that was good then. It wouldn't be good now. So again, there's no actual concrete answer. How many should you send? Test and measure. And then it's how many campaigns should I have? Well, this I'll give some guidance, and then I'll hand over to you, Ian, which is, I think you should aim to definitely have an evergreen campaign that'll just keep working no matter what, year in, year out, because it's the same questions, high level. But then, related to specific assets, you can have more timely campaigns. And especially if your industry is fast moving and there are industry changes that are coming out, you can have very kind of micro campaigns that are probably only going to be relevant for a month or two. That's fine as well. So you definitely want an evergreen nurture. you probably want something that's maybe specific to a topic or an ebook or whatever white paper that's downloaded. But then if you have the resources, having something that is timely or fitting a current trend or relevant to people can be useful. So there's 3. At least how many overall campaigns? Well, as many as you can helpfully provide with the resources you have. Your thoughts, Ian?
My thought, Craig, is, and I see people struggle with this, and this is a very good question, is what are you trying to, I'd ask myself the question is, what are you trying to do with the nurture, right? So if you've got lots of subscribers and you want to move the subscribers into leads, for example, then just work on that, right? And start with a really simple 3 to 4 part email series with the goal is to either disqualify them and keep them as subscribers or move them into a lead and get them moving along in the life cycle with your business. Start there. And I always say version 1 better than version none. So don't overcomplicate it. If you can only get 3 emails, do the 3 emails. Get that going, right?
Yep.
Once you start to see feedback in terms of data coming through as to what people are clicking on, what they're doing, you can add to that. You can add another email. You can say email 2 is really bombing out. I need to change that. You can change that. Create another version, insert it into the workflow. So that's where I'll encourage you to get started, because once you start that, then you'll have data and you'll be able to say, okay, well, now that I understand people are doing this, well, what am I missing out on? So that has tend to be the thing that's worked with our customers, is that you can overcomplicate it because people create spreadsheets of like, oh, I need like 10 emails. Now I've got to go to write the content. Oh, now who should I send this to? Like there is a lot of confusion. I always just say start with the lowest common denominator to get it going. Use the information and feedback to then do the next thing. And that works really well.
Excellent advice. Thanks, Ian. You know, it reminds me, and hopefully this is, well, encouraging or comforting for our listeners, but for the longest time, we didn't have any follow-up when people signed up for HubShots. Can you believe this? We're so time poor. We were building this stuff for our clients. We didn't even build it for ourselves. Now I think we have quite a nice follow-up. Pooja on the team and Roslyn, probably they worked and they've fleshed it out. And so to your point, initially we had 1 email. Oh yeah, at least get that. Then there was maybe 2 or 3. At least get that in place. I really like that. 1 is better than none. All right, final couple of minutes here. And this is another question or kind of scenario that's come up, contact rotation.
Yes.
And also the difference between sales rotation and service rotation.
Yep.
Of a contact. Do you maybe want to chat through this a bit, Ian?
Yeah. Okay. Sales rotation, between sales reps, you need to have a sales seat to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Service rotation, you need a service seat, so professional enterprise for both of those. Why do you want to do that? And I think I've got to think for sales rotation, there are a few things you can do. You can rotate them evenly. You could rotate it based on, so we do more advanced things in terms of based on postcodes of where people are, and then rotate it to the people in those postcodes. So like kind of abstracting at one level. You can do a random rotation. I think that's the other one. And what other rotations are there, Craig?
Well, I think you've highlighted
based
one which always
hours,
comes
maybe.
up, which is geography. Yeah.
Yes.
Sales reps have regions.
Correct.
Maybe they have industries. If that happened to be a field that was filled out, that goes over to this person here. So any criteria that you can kind of understand about the contact could be part of it. Yep. And you're right, there's teams. You can rotate between teams as well.
Yeah. And then when we're talking about service, very similar again, but the difference with service is there's now an option that if the rep is not online, it doesn't rotate to them. So they can still belong to the team, but let's say they all work in different shifts. You can just say, I only want to rotate this to people that are actually online at the minute. So it'll rotate and balance between those reps and what they're doing. So that's probably the big difference there. I haven't checked the sales rotation recently. Maybe that's rolled out to that as well, but it's part of service. And I actually really think that's a common thing, especially as people work across zones and countries and teams. It's been really valuable.
Yeah. So that's my comment as well, because I feel that, not that we've used it a lot, but that the service rotation is a great path that they should be going down. And I would like to see a similar, I actually think there should just be a rotation tool. You know, they've got a lead scoring tool now, the lead scoring app.
Yeah.
I think there should be a rotation app, because at the moment, if you're rotating between sales reps, you're probably doing it in workflows on criteria. It's almost, I won't say that's manual because it's automated by a workflow, but you're kind of setting, here's the criteria, and then maybe the rotation is between a team. And that's when you can say, a portion. On the service side, I think this is really where we want to be heading. You can basically set up rules to kind of say, yep, these apply, and here's how you rotate them out. I do like your point about whether they're available. You might not need that as much for salespeople, but you might if it's a high-moving industry. We all know that in sales, the quicker you respond to an inquiry, the much higher success. And a lot of businesses now are after the 5-minute follow-up. A form comes in on the website, they get a call within 5 minutes. That has a much higher conversion than the next day. Following up your form from yesterday. Who are you? Forget, so time is of the essence. So I really like that sense of, are they available? And the other thing about that is, well, what's if the sales rep's on holiday that week? You don't want to kind of assign them a contact. So that availability piece, I think, is really, really interesting as part of it. So I'd love to see this idea of a rotation app being fleshed out with rules that can be applied. I'd also like to see the ability to have rotation teams in a way, because you know how you can set up main teams and extra teams and assign people to that. But generally when you're rotating contacts between, as a sales part, they have to have a sales seat, as you said. I think it's per
I think it's only the main team,
Craig.
Yeah,
Sorry?
correct. And that's the same in service.
It's
the
main team. And so you might this is the US team, but you might actually want to rotate between a subset of the US team based on other criteria. So I'd love to see like a rotation app where you can say, here's the rotation teams. And this is a different team for rotating a sales rep, a sales lead versus a service lead and things like that. So this is an area I can see really growing. I know HubSpot's been doing some things because even on the sales side, I think they're rolling out quotas. Have you seen that part where you can kind of have like, we'll rotate between these people, but if the person's already got a full quota, they can't. Right. I really like some of those parts as well. So we'll see how that goes in the future.
And I think that's the whole thing, Craig. It's like understanding, it's solving the problem, right? With all of these things, what problem are you trying to solve? Are you trying to rotate it because that feature's there in HubSpot, or is it actually something that you need? And I think people get hung up. Like recently, they're like, this person's not here, or how do I know that that's going to pick up that task? So especially like, for example, let's say that there are tasks that are getting assigned out for people to do things, right? A really simple thing is if that person's not there, I say, why don't you just put the task in a queue where the team picks it up. So they know that they've got to go to that queue, right? There are certain people like you, me, let's say Rosalind's a part of the queue. We just look in that queue. That's a part of our daily work. And, at the start of the day, maybe you go in there and you say, okay, Ian's got these 3, Rosalind's taking these 4, I'll take these 2.
Yeah.
And then you divvy them up, assign them to the person, and away you go, right? You don't have to overcomplicate things. Like think about first when you have these problems, let me work out the really complex part about how I juggle this around. I was like, no, let me just put it into place and see how this works. So a queue is a really good place to work out of. Once people are working with queues, then you can go, okay, well, now I understand how this is working. How can I automate this better? Or what do I do to resolve this problem that I've got?
Great approach. Love it. All right, we've come to time, Ian, so we should wrap things up there. Thanks to everyone that joined the call, and we'll be making this full recording available shortly on our YouTube channel. Till next time, Ian. Catch you later,
Craig.